All right. At any time you're ready.
All right. So good evening. My name is Riley James, and I'm going to be going over habitat suitability analysis for the jaguar in the Amazon biome of Brazil. So just a brief overview of what I'll be going over. I'll start with the study goal, and then followed by the topic importance, study area, go over the variables, weighted linear combination, followed by the results, and then I'll finish with a few key takeaways. So the overall study goal was to locate suitable habitat for the jaguar to be highlighted for potential conservation efforts. And why is this topic important? So the jaguar is a keystone species of the Amazon, and oftentimes overall health of an ecosystem can be addressed by how well or poor a keystone species is doing. The jaguar's habitat range historically occurred between the southwestern United States and extended down through Central Argentina. They are now considered regionally extinct in both El Salvador and Uruguay. Recent estimates show that their range has reduced by up to 48%, and this range reduction can be attributed to land cover conversion and fragmentation from human activity with things such as deforestation. The increase of land conversion into agricultural lands leads to competition for resources and persecution by humans. And so my study area is the Amazon biome within Brazil. Brazil has been identified as a stronghold for jaguar habitat, and approximately 50% of the remaining habitat can be located there. It has a human population ranging from 21 to 24 million people, spread out and mainly located within pockets across 4,100,000 square kilometers. And recent estimates have suggested that 25 out of 33 jaguar populations occurring outside the Amazonian forest should be categorized as critically endangered and 8% as endangered. Now that I've gone over the study area, we'll next go over the variables used for analysis. So after reading several studies that looked at jaguar habitat selection throughout South America and even a review of the last 25 years of modeling efforts in both Arizona and New Mexico, I selected 3 variable categories that were found to be statistically significant the most often across studies. The first variable category was land cover, and I isolated 3 desirable land cover types found in jaguar path selection. All analysis was performed with Esri's ArcGIS Pro version 2.9. I began by downloading the initial raster layer depicted on the left and then went through the workflow to the right to end up with my final feature cross layers. The darker orange squares represent feature cross layers, and lighter orange circles are tools that were used to transform the initial raster tip layer seen on the left. And then the final 3 feature layer classes were the heavy tree cover, wetlands, and shrubs, and those are located on the far right of the workflow chart. And after going through the workflow, this produced these 3 land cover maps. The heavy tree cover area can be seen on the top left map, and these areas have been found to be the strongest selected land cover type by jaguars, followed by wetlands as seen on the top right, and finally the shrubland cover areas are on the bottom row. The strongest statistically significant variable that jaguars avoided were areas of high human impact. And to create the final human activity feature layer, I began with a population density raster TIFF and converted it into a vector layer. I then downloaded deforestation data collected between 2008 and 2020 and excluded those areas from analysis as they were deemed as not viable. The remaining population density feature class layer was sorted into intervals ranging from 0 to 24 people per square kilometer. A previous study had found that threshold values of 12 to 24 people per square kilometer could be used to predict the extinction of jaguars in a defined area, and so any area with a higher density level was also removed from the study. The final feature class layer created was the human activity layer. That can be seen here on this screen. So areas in the light green depict a human population density of 0 to 3 people per square kilometer, followed by the darker green of 4 to 7. Then we have the 8 to 11 people in the light blue, finished with the 12 to 24 people per square kilometer in the dark blue. Sorry about that. The final variable chosen was terrain ruggedness. Terrain ruggedness is another variable repeatedly shown throughout studies that is statistically significant, and jaguars avoid areas that are more difficult to traverse. I began with a raster layer of a digital elevation model, or a DEM, and clipped that to the Amazon biome study area. I then downloaded ArcHydro Pro to use the Terrain Ruggedness Index tool, which takes measures of change in elevation from each cell in a digital elevation model. I then converted that to a vector layer and sorted it into intervals. And that produced this final terrain ruggedness map. And I have areas that had a elevation change of anywhere from 5 to 75 meters in that light green. They're categorized as level to slightly rugged, followed with a change of 76 to 250 meters in that darker green, and that was categorized as intermediate to moderately rugged. And then we have a change of 251 to 400 meters in that lighter blue as highly rugged, and finished with that dark blue, which is a change of 401 to 1007 meters, and that's labeled as extremely rugged. After having each of my variable layers created, it was now time to perform the weighted linear combination to create the suitable habitat map. The tools listed were used on each variable to add a suitability ranking to their attribute tables. If an area was awarded a 1, it meant it fell under a high suitable, and it increased with ranking values of 2, 3, to 4, corresponding to medium, low, or not suitable suitability levels. Previous studies found that a jaguar range can reach up to 25 kilometers a day, and so the multi-ring buffer tool was used on the land cover variable. If any area fell within 15 kilometers from any of the 3 categories, it was awarded a 1, 20 kilometers were given a 2, 25 kilometers were given a 3, finished with anything that fell out of 25 kilometers was given a 4 or not suitable. Because the human activity and terrain ruggedness variables were in intervals, they were awarded a suitability value based on jaguar selection patterns. So areas with less population density were ranked high on suitability with a 1, and areas that fell within the extinction predictive values of 12 to 24 were ranked as not suitable with a 4. Similarly, terrain ruggedness values were given anything that was level to slightly moderate, with a TRI value of 5 to 75 was given a 1, and as the TRI value increased, so did the ranking, meaning as terrain got worse, the suitability also got worse. Each variable was then given a weight to signify the importance of that variable for habitat suitability. The land cover variables made up 30%, with high tree cover being the highest at 0.2. Human activity was deemed the most important to suitability at 45%, and finally terrain ruggedness was 10%. The calculate field tool was used to create a suitability value and produce a map of suitable areas. So this was the suitable habitat map that was created. The cream colored areas were high suitability and they fell under that 1. Then as the orange color darkens, it decreases down to a 3, meaning low suitability. A majority of the study area was considered high suitable at 80.2%, followed by 19.92% under medium suitable, and then only a small portion fell under low suitable at 0.06, and I didn't have a single area that fell under not suitable. I then compared the habitat suitability map to lands that were currently protected, and that could be viewed on the map to the left. When compared to those areas, 73.61% of areas were high suitable, 26.3% were medium suitable, and only 0.4% were low suitable. I then compared the suitability map to areas that weren't protected, and so these areas could potentially be added to future conservation units. And 86.52% were high suitable, 13.39% were medium suitable, and only 0.09 were. Takeaways from the study to keep in mind are that even though suitable areas for jaguar habitat were found, the map shows areas of habitat suitability with the variables in their current state, and it doesn't predict changes in those variables, meaning the areas that are now deemed suitable may not be in the future. So an area that has population increase wouldn't be as suitable as it is now. Same with a heavy tree cover area, could potentially become deforested. So I suggest for any future use that either multiple iterations of the analysis are run while conservation units are created, or that this analysis is combined with predictive modeling. This analysis can also be performed for other countries throughout Central and South America, but the variable criterions may differ, or different variables altogether may prove to be statistically significant. For instance, I looked at past selections in North American populations, and they didn't show as much avoidance to areas of higher terrain ruggedness. And then a study in Colombia found that distance to water was an important variable. Analysis in the future can also be combined with additional core areas of jaguar habitat throughout Brazil, and possible habitat corridors can be created, which would help sustain genetic health amongst these species and help the populations that are struggling outside of the Amazon as well. And that leads me to the references that were used throughout this PowerPoint. And then I will now open it up to any questions.